like,
Yes,
I
be
tried
fine.
to
All right.
Mics.
when you're ready, do you just join?
All right. Welcome, everyone. If you are just joining us, you will want to mute your microphones.
The camera's not working.
That's okay if the camera doesn't work.
Oh my gosh, the real science people.
Please
We
mute.
are. Welcome. Welcome. If you are just joining us, welcome to the Legumes in Space live session. I'm Lori Waters. Hello. If you want to tell us where you're from, you're going to type that into the chat. Go ahead and mute your microphones.
We're actually in space right now.
All right.
Okay. All Fieldson students, please mute your mics. Only
going to
ask
be-
things through the chat.
We're going to be going through our flight readiness review.
I don't have to.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on Daddy's. That's fine.
And while we're getting set up, I just want to share something that Isabel said. We're all space folks here. We're all scientists, Isabel.
Crazy
Yes,
space nerds.
welcome
Yep.
to the club here. We're going to be doing some really cool stuff with Lori and Michael, Javier, and our other teachers. So
Never met real
Thank you.
science.
and Gil, we got Gil from Japan and
Except
Diana
for
from Canada. And who
Michael.
else? I think I've got someone from Romania in here. Did I see? Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I heard
Let's
South
see.
Africa was on the line. I heard France is on the line.
Let's see. Javier, you were saying that the YouTube is not streaming. It says on my screen it is. Can you recheck that for me?
Yes, I just checked. It's live on the website, but I think on the app is not.
Okay.
But I think just the regular website is doing fine.
Okay.
Shall we go?
All right, Michael, you want to kick us off?
Welcome to Legumes in Space.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we as the Magnitude PI team are excited that you are joining us from all over the world. If you've not yet told us in chat where you're coming from, we would love to know. And we have a great program lined up for you today as we are looking ahead to our launch tomorrow for ExoLab-8. Just a reminder, if you want to keep your microphones muted until we get to the question and answer portion. And it might also be helpful if you want to turn off your video if you have an issue with bandwidth, since we have so many people on our Zoom call today. So, Michael, what's happening?
Oh, way too much. Lori and I have been on the call a couple of times over the last 24 hours, just trying to get stuff sorted out, scheduling, snafus, all kinds of stuff. So, to everybody who's been dealing with me for the last 40 hours, thank you for your patience. I'm still hearing some feedback, so there's some open mics. Please mute your mics. So, welcome everybody. This is our first live broadcast of ExoLab-8. We're very excited to have all y'all with us. This is a final flight readiness review, which means all the people involved in this mission are going to report to find out if we're actually ready to go to space. And this is something that happens with every mission. And we thought it'd be fun to do our version of a final flight readiness review for everybody here and be able to interact. We'll have a brief report from several people about different aspects of the mission. And then we'll have an opportunity for some live Q&A from students. Teachers have vetted questions, and we'll give teachers a chance to call out. I've got about a half a dozen questions from the Bronx, and I'll call on those people. We're going to do it as recordings, but students, you're going to have to remember and do your question live that we tried to record earlier. Didn't have enough time to get this working. So
for your whole screen or something like that.
Okay. Wait, now my whole thing.
All right. Thank you, Michael. We're going to turn it over. Ted's our moderator for our panel today. And for our agenda, we are going to hear from a number of the representatives of the principal investigator team, the teachers and scientists who have been working on this. So we'll hear from our astroemoji Lisa for a weather report. Steve and Javier will give us a rocket report. Michael will cover science. I'll cover the payload, and then we're going to open it up for some student questions. So Ted, go ahead and take us away.
Holy smokes, I didn't know I was going to be moderating, but easy enough for me to do. Laura, you might want to share really quickly, maybe via email, the agenda. But I just want to welcome everyone again. Fantastic. I guess we're running through YouTube, through Google Classroom, and through Zoom. So wherever you might be, anywhere in the world or through any of those channels, welcome. As Lori said, here's Mission 8. Now we're scheduled to launch tomorrow morning on an Antares rocket at 9:36 a.m. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that rocket. But the one big proponent of that, in order to make sure that we get up there, is weather, right? We're here on Earth. We got a nice, wonderful atmosphere here. We got to be able to get through that atmosphere on a nice, good day. Too windy, if it's rainy or cloudy, if there's storms, then we have to move our launch date. So who's the first on our list here, Lori?
We're going to hear from Lisa first.
Well, fantastic. So I'm queuing it up the right way. So we're so lucky to have Lisa join us from the center of our country here in the United States. Lisa is a meteorologist and an educator. And so she's going to give us some insight about the weather. So Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thanks for that. So yeah, I've been doing the weather for many years, and watching rockets launch has been so exciting every time they go up, and the weather is so important. I don't know if everybody really thinks about that. I'm sorry, it's kind of dark in here. We're having problems seeing the screen. So, but we watch the weather a lot for them, and weather is extremely important. And it's not something a lot of people think about because, well, if it's nice and clear outside, you assume, okay, no big deal, the launch is going to take place. But there's other factors involved that you may not be able to see with your own eyes that could affect a launch. Now, for the one that's coming up, right now it's 36 degrees at Wallops Island, and it was raining. It's now just cloudy. So if it had to launch right now, it probably wouldn't be able to go. There is no rain, but the cloud deck height is way too low, like close to the ground, so it's not able to take off. Tomorrow, that system is supposed to move off into the Atlantic Ocean. And the big deal is how far does it get away from Wallops Island, because we have a high pressure coming in behind it. And the two that get close together has the potential to cause a lot of wind at the surface. And that's not good. So we're watching for winds, and we're watching, because we're in between those two storm systems, we could get some vertical developing clouds as we get towards the lunchtime. And that could be a problem for the flight too. So fingers crossed so far. That's our only two things we got to worry about. So hopefully the system will move far off to the Atlantic Ocean away from it, and we'll be right in the perfect middle. So everything will be a go.
That is awesome, Lisa. And if we have any a graphic or a visual that you might want to pop up a little later, just to kind of show us where we are, we definitely throw that up here in our meeting today.
I can do
Lori,
that.
I didn't get your list yet here, but who do we next have on our agenda?
I put it in chat for us. So
okay.
Our next up is Steve and Javier, and then followed by Michael, and then I'll talk about payload
So
last.
how are we getting up there? I'm guessing with Steve and Javier, that means we're going to be talking about rockets. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you guys, and let's talk about how we plan to get to space.
Okay, so we are going to be taking an Antares rocket from Wallops Island, Virginia, to the International Space Station. Now, currently, that rocket is not ready to go because it is currently sitting like this on the launch pad. Well, this isn't good because we want to make sure the pointy end is up and the flamey end is down. That's very, very important. And of course, you need to make sure you're wearing your goggles whenever you're near something like that, because that'll really get pretty bad. So this Antares rocket, it has two Energomash RD-181 engines. And these engines are going to have enough thrust. They're liquid propelled with kerosene and liquid oxygen to get us into low Earth orbit. And then at that point, the second stage is going to kick in. So the first stage will fall away. That second stage is going to kick in. And we've got a Castor 30 XL solid rocket booster that's on there. Now, anyone that ever remembers or has seen a shuttle launch go, those are those white boosters on the side were solid rocket boosters. Once you light that thing, it's going to go. There is no turning it off. There is no fluctuating, how fast it's going to go. It's just going to go. So they got to make sure that they are ready. So that caster engine is going to get us up to the speed that we need to go, which is 17,500 miles per hour, and get us in the direction for our payload, which is the Cygnus spacecraft, the SS Katherine Johnson, to get there. And for more on that, I'm going to turn it over to Javier.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, Steve just told us about the rocket. So this is the actual 3D printed model rocket. So we have here the Antares rocket. So as Steve was saying, after the second stage, we have this extra booster, and inside of it, we have a special spaceship that is called the Cygnus, okay? So this gonna be flying to the orbit of the International Space Station. And this is very protective because it requires to be protected for the space launch. So after this is in the orbit of the International Space Station and around the planet Earth, this will separate. And as you can see, this is a small piece that just fly to the International Space Station. So this is the Cygnus. After a couple of hours, the Cygnus will look just like this, okay? So it was packed, very small, and then it will launch these solar panels. These Cygnus will fly for over 2 days around the planet Earth to catch the orbit of the International Space Station. And when this spaceship gets close to the International Space Station, about 10 meters, there's something from our friends in Canada that they built and developed, which is called the Canadarm2. So they catch the Cygnus and then they put it in place in the International Space Station. So this is a very cool rocket because this is like our Amazon or our, the FedEx. So this will get all the important things that the astronauts need, including space food, clothing, and of course our experiments. So this is the Cygnus, and this will fly to the orbit of the International Space Station.
Wonderful. That's fantastic information about this rocket, the Antares rocket that Steve shared with us, and the Cygnus capsule that Javier showed that it has to have that the fairing to protect it as it goes through the atmosphere. Once it leaves the atmosphere, that fairing falls away, and you can see that capsule coming out. So, Steve, I've got a question for you. How fast does this rocket have to go, and does it just need to go straight up, or what's the story about getting into orbit?
So it's got to eventually reach a speed of 17,500 miles per hour.
Can you say that again? How fast?
17,500 miles per hour. It's about 25 times the speed of sound. It's really, really fast. And it's going to get to a low orbit. And then it's going to raise its orbit and get a little bit higher up so that it catches up with the space station. So it's going to launch at the same time that the space station goes right overhead. And then to try to play catch up. So basically, we're taking a bullet and trying to hit another bullet in space with it. So it's amazing. I explained to my students that it's like a quarterback trying to throw a pass to a wide receiver. You don't throw it to where he's going to be or to where he is. You want to throw it to where he's going to be once it gets down there. So there's a lot of
amazing
math.
Yeah, you definitely get a speeding ticket at that speed. So how, at that speed, it's going so fast, how long does it take to go around the Earth?
It takes right about 90 minutes, an hour and a half to go around the Earth. So yeah, just they see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every day.
This is amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So Javier, you showed us a model of the Cygnus payload, and I guess it's called SS Katherine Johnson after that famous woman that helped calculate the lunar landings in the 60s and 70s. How big is that? Can you walk inside? Is it large enough to walk inside?
Yes, it is. And it's not that big. It's kind of the same size as a car. It's roughly like 5 meters by 3 meters. So it's not a big, spaceship.
Okay, so it's still 5, so that's about 15 feet, I guess, in Imperial. And
Yeah.
was it 9 feet in diameter? That's still really large.
Yes.
And it sounds like we got a lot of different experiments in there. Our experiment's actually not that big. Ours is, in terms of centimeters, it's about 20 centimeters wide and 20 centimeters tall, or about 8 inches tall and wide, and 4 inches deep, or about 10 centimeters deep. And so we're going to be in there with thousands of pounds, right? How many pounds of payload? I think close to 8,000. Is that right?
Yes, yep, I think that's right.
The minimum capacity, but it can go a little bit higher.
Wow. So we're getting the ride with, I guess the astronauts might get some letters from home. They might get some fresh fruits and vegetables. Maybe they get some ice cream. So they're going to unload that stuff first, but we're going to be in there. And what is the science and what are we sending in our box among all these others in this big rocket going up there? Hopefully the weather's going to be great. We're going to get up there this weekend. So,
so Ted, actually, Diana has something to show us too. She has a nice little model that she can share real quick.
Absolutely. Let's see from Diana from Canada. Bring it on. What you got for us?
I was so happy. I was so happy to hear Javier mention that, because we love to be able to be demonstrating and participating in the States and all of our global friends with space exploration. So
that.
Here is the Canadarm. I will just block it off on one end. This is Canadarm1, Canadarm2 with 60 degrees of freedom. And along with that are these hand ends, the manipulation devices that the Dexter gets attached to, which does the capturing and bringing in of anything that's being sent up. It also helps with EVA, so that the extravehicular activities that are being done by the astronauts are supported by the Canadarm2. And we're pretty proud of this robot. It's done a lot, and Canadarm3 is now being forecasted and built here in Canada only, so that we can service the next trips to Mars and the moon. So we're pretty excited about what's going on there. So look again, 360 degrees of freedom, walks over itself, rotates, has hands that get attached to it called Dexter, and it is a remote manipulation system.
Wow, so the space station actually has arms, or an arm.
Actually,
now, how big is that?
2. So the actual size of that in space, oh my goodness me, I would not know the answer to that.
It's pretty big though, right? It's longer than a person.
It's massive. I have walked around it, so hold on a second, I'll be able to tell you.
Wow.
It is 410 kilograms is what it weighs.
Okay, that's pretty heavy.
And then we have the measure of 17 meters. All right.
That's pretty long.
So that's pretty long. In fact, if you looked at your school hallway, normally it is the length of a school hallway from beginning to end. If you have a short school hallway, if you're able to go around the hallway, it's about that distance. It's a lot of fun, actually, to measure that out with a trundle wheel. Great math activity, by the way.
That's wonderful. And so this amazing Canadarm is going to grab our Cygnus capsule that Javier and Steve showed us launching on the rocket, and it's going to grab it and bring it to the space station. So guys, how big is the space station? In terms, so think about—
if you know the answer to that question, let's type it into chat so that everybody can give us an idea. What is the size of the space station?
Yeah, and maybe you don't need to give an exact dimension, but if you're going to say it's about the same size as something.
Maybe hold that question. Let's see who answers.
All right. So we'll let that go on for a little bit, but I want to get right to our science. So we're talking about all these things because we've got our payload going up. We've got some plants and some bacteria. Is that right? Michael, can you tell us more about what we're doing on ExoLab-8?
Yeah. So ExoLab-8 is legumes in space. We have sent several other kinds of plants up in the past. This is our 8th mission. But this time what we're looking at is a very special relationship between legumes and a bacteria that lives in the soil. We're sending red clover and the bacteria Rhizobium leguminosarum. And those two organisms work together in a special cooperation that we call a symbiosis. And in that relationship, the legume plant, the clover in this case, through photosynthesis makes sugars, and it gives those sugars to the rhizobia, the bacteria, for energy, just like it does for itself. And in exchange, the rhizobia take the nitrogen in the atmosphere and turn it into plant food so that the plants can grow the big green leaves and produce more energy. So it's this really great relationship. And why do we care about that? Because that's how we make soil. And the science behind all of this plant growth is to find out, can we make soil in space? Because we can't send Earth soil to space. It's a little dangerous in terms of all the other potential things that grow in soil, because soil is very much a living thing. Some people call it dirt, but it's not dirt. Dirt is dead. And that's the problem with the surface of the moon or an asteroid or Mars, is that's dead material. It's inorganic for the most part. And we call it regolith. And we need this whole biological thing to be happening there, that is this dance between the bacteria and the atmosphere. And your other question might be, well, why don't we just send some fertilizer to space? Well, again, Javier and Steve talked about the launching something. It takes a lot of energy to put stuff into space. Fertilizers are heavy, and they're actually pretty dangerous. So we don't want those kinds of things in a habitat that's closed up that people are trying to live in. So our experiment, we're going to be sending clover in test tubes, and they have the rhizobium in there already. Everything's sealed up, so we don't have to worry about contaminating anything on the space station. And we're going to find out if these clover can make root nodules. And all you students who are part of ExoLab, that's what we're trying to do. We want to see, do we see these little growths on the roots of our clover? So that's kind of a quick summary. So right now what we're doing is setting up the ground trials. Later on, Lori's going to tell us about the payload that's going to be heading to space. But I've got the control trials for the ground here setting up, and many of your teachers are doing the same thing. I've got the media poured in the test tube, and that's going to provide something for the clover roots to grow in. The rhizobium is already in here. We'll be putting the clover seeds in there in a couple of days and starting everything up. Over.
That is awesome. Now, what you were showing us is the ExoLab and the tubes that for what a teacher might use, or a library or science center. Now,
Right.
look at some
so over here on the side, I've got some that are running the pre-flight trials. So yeah, this is going to give us the light in our classroom and measure all the environmental conditions so that we can compare that to what's happening on the station. So right now, this one's looking at red and blue light, but we're going to use magenta light like this on the space station. I don't know how well the color's coming through.
Oh, it's coming in pretty good.
Okay.
You know, what's interesting here now, our students can do this at home. They don't actually need to be at school.
You can really do this low tech. So
Yeah,
this
so
is
walk
a
us
little
through
mini
that a
clover
little bit.
farm in an upcycled water bottle. So it's got that same growth media in here, the same bacteria, the same clover seeds, and it's been growing here. This is actually several months old. This was planted back in, I think, October. So it's really simple to do at home. You can make the same kind of observations, and this is just as important as the observations you might make from the ExoLab.
Right. So students, you're more than likely going to be making your own container and do some observations. Again, if you're doing some drawings, or you want to write a little poem or anything else that's art-based, I'd love to hear and see what you guys are up to. Make sure you send it our way. Just hello@Magnitude.io. You might want to send it through your teacher first, or your guardian, and then they can send it on to us. But we're really excited about anything that you're creating and through your observations. Can we get this plant to work with this bacteria? Can they produce these little nitrogen nodules? And maybe we can start thinking about what we could do to put a garden on Mars, or what could we do to make life better here on Earth, because food's really important. You know, we actually have a special guest, and I know it's super early in the morning for him. We have another plant scientist, Gil Cawthorn from Japan, from Osaka. So if you're still on, Gil, if you haven't fallen asleep, you want to pop in and say hello real quick to everybody?
Hi, everyone. Ohayou gozaimasu from Japan. So happy everyone's here and is excited for this upcoming mission. As Michael said, this science is super important. Not only will it further our knowledge of our place in space and how to live beyond our Earth, but also it has the potential to help people here to more sustainably grow their food. So what you guys are doing at home and at schools is helping out the entire team here at Magnitude and up in the ISS to further along this amazing research endeavor. So super stoked to be a part of this. I'm so happy you guys are all taking part in this with us.
We're so glad you stayed up, or maybe you got up early. I'm not quite sure what you did to be here at 3 a.m, but thank you very much, Gil.
A bit of both, yeah. Thank you, Tim.
There's like 5 different pages of folks, and I know we have teachers from around the world, which is absolutely fascinating. But I want to make sure we're staying on topic. So how big is the space station? I guess I saw a lot of answers that seemed to be pretty spot on. If you imagine a football field, end to end, this thing's like covering a football field with the large solar panels and the heat, what's required to dissipate the heat, your heat sinks that are on the station. And it's, I guess, as I understand, it's about the size of a 5-bedroom house, something like that. But you just can't go outside, right? If you go outside, you're in the deep space, and well, it's not too pleasant. You got to put on your suit. I think we heard from Diana in Canada. If you're going to do an EVA or extravehicular activity, you're going to go outside the space station. You're going to have to put your spacesuit on. But I think that's why they made the Canada arm, so it can go do different things in space for us. And it's definitely going to grab our Cygnus capsule when it gets there. Hopefully by, I think, Monday or Tuesday of next week, it's going to arrive. But let's talk about our
payload. Have we heard who's going to drive the Canadarm?
Oh, that's
I believe it's our Japanese Japanese astronaut. Yes, that's up there currently. Yes,
I think we've got 7 astronauts up there this time.
Yeah, we've got two Russians, the Japanese, 3 Americans, 4 Americans. Right. Yeah.
It's crowded. And up there. While we're up there, there are going to be 3 more astronauts joining them too, apparently. For crew 2 is going to be up there while we're up there. Yep. But let's talk about the payload before I get us off topic too far. And so, Lori, I think you want to talk about the payload itself. So we have some time for some student questions and teacher questions as well.
All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yep.
Yep. Very good. So this is our ExoLab-8 Cube Lab that is going to space. This is our official experiment that has been assembled by our flight provider, Space Tango. And you'll notice there is our Astromoji teacher, Lisa Turney from Kansas. So if you are one of her students in Kansas, that is so exciting for you, for your teacher to be virtually going to space. She's got some great lessons planned out for you and for all our participants. Here's what our Cube Lab looks like inside. Check out all of those wires and tubes and test tubes. So this is the payload. It's a 4U size, which is larger than what we've flown before. You'll notice there are 3 test tubes. There are 3 seeds per test tube. So we have 9 flight samples, which is really good for flying those replicates, so that in case some of them don't germinate, we have some others that will hopefully germinate. Because there's always a few in the batch that might grow a little bit slower or not at all sometimes. But we've had a really good germination rate with clover. So we've got our 9 seeds in the box. And right there, that big black box, I think that's one of my favorite parts of this Cube Lab that was specially designed for this project. And it's got a fun name. It's called a juice box. So what do you think that holds? Well, we are going to start our experiment when we get to station by inserting a little bit of water, like a 0.5 milliliter of water into each tube, and it's going to wet the biostrate felt that's holding those seeds. You see, if we put those seeds right in the media today, those would start germinating in about 12 hours. And we don't want our seeds to grow just yet. So in this box, they have a way to use computer programming and send it a signal and let the seeds know, okay, it's time, and it turns on the water. And then that felt will be wet, and then they'll be able to grow. And then towards the end of the experiment, it has a fixative in it, in which it will freeze the plants in time. And then we'll be able to get those back. Will come back to Earth in the spring, late spring or early summer. And we'll be able to do our post-flight science of microscopy.
Wow, that's amazing. So some folks noted that they saw some 3D printed parts, and that's absolutely right. Some of those parts were manufactured custom for this, and you can kind of see the little lines on that that black cover there of the printed part. And Lori, I had a question about the water. So we're in space, and we're talking about microgravity, so things are floating around. What's happening with the water?
So the water was added to the tubing in such a way that when they activate this and send it the signal to release the water, it's going to just have that little amount that will go straight into the felt. In another picture, let's see, this picture, you can see the green tube, very, very narrow green tube that's coming down from the top of the test tube towards the felt. That's how the water will be delivered. We want the felt to absorb the water because otherwise our water will be floating around. Those bubbles in space, that water, if you've ever seen the Chris Hadfield and some of the other astronauts as they play with water in space, those fluid dynamics, water behaves very strangely in space. So we need to make sure we are aimed it right at the felt and that it gets absorbed rather than bounces off with 6 million little bubbles floating around our test tube.
Yeah, that's going to be one of our major science challenges. And I really put that out there to the students, is to think about how might the roots of our plants react to the microgravity environment. They've got to get air and they've got to get water. And how is all that going to work when they're closed up in these little test tubes? And these are sealed up because, as Lori said, we're going to put a preservative in there at the end of mission. So there's nothing that can leak out of this.
Hey, Michael, I have a question for you. For either you or Lori, really any of our co-principal investigators. So we're not using water. It looks like we've got the gel at the bottom. And I know the student kids have a powder, so they're going to mix that with some hot water to hopefully with the help of their parents if they need a little help in the kitchen. But can we talk a little bit about that agar and how that's
agar is really cool. It's actually a plant product. It comes either from kelp, seaweed, or from an algae, and it is a protein that when we mix it with water and heat it up to dissolve it, when that cools, it turns into the gel. And I've got the tube that I literally just poured this tube about an hour ago. So I'm letting this one completely cure so that it's dry at the surface. And this will be one of them that gets loaded up in the next, hopefully later tonight, and then put in the ExoLab once we get on orbit so that we map our ground controls to the flight trials. So it's a really cool material. It's kind of like Jell-O, except it's made with a plant protein instead of an animal protein. And then
that's right. I think Japan. I think it was Gil from Japan who gave us that tip of hey, there's this vegan gelatin that you might want to investigate.
Yeah, exactly. Because one of the other issues with this is we were using often when you do plant experiments like this, you use something called tissue culture media, and the gel is there, but there's all kinds of other nutrients to feed the plants or whatever it is you're growing. And we were getting a lot of overgrowth of our rhizobia bacteria, as well as some other things that just seemed to contaminate the problem. And they were growing faster than our experiment. So we went to just basically gelatin and water. There's nothing in there. So the plants are going to have to make their own energy, and they're going to need those rhizobia to feed them.
So our box has been sealed up completely. They don't like extra little microbes on the space station. So we are closed and sealed in that box. So it has a limited amount of air and the water and the moisture in the media. And this is a picture from a live shot just a couple hours ago. You can see as our Lisa Moji, our Astromoji Lisa Turney gave us the weather report. You can see it's very foggy and hazy and rainy up there. So hopefully that weather system clears out. But and then Stephen Javier said, yep, that rocket is laying horizontal right now as they are completing the loading of all the supplies and the equipment and our ExoLab-8.
This is super awesome. I always get excited when we do these. I can't believe we're going to be going to space. So we've talked a lot about our mission, about the weather and how important it is for the weather to be good for our rocket, what kind of rocket we're on, the Antares, and the spacecraft. The SS Katherine Johnson is a Cygnus spacecraft, and how it's going to get to the space station, how it's going to synchronize in its orbit, traveling super fast, right? And it goes around the Earth every 90 minutes. That's really, really, really fast. And how the Canadarm is going to grab it and bring it in. Astronaut is going to float around and take it and install us in our locker and boot us up. And then Michael has talked about our actual experiment, how the bacteria and the plant we want to see them work together, how you will be doing that at home in your kitchen or in your classroom, how your teachers will set up the lab so you can follow along. And you've kind of heard from some of our teachers from around the world. We have many folks from around the world, and we're going to have some of these live events as well. And of course, then Lori just walked us through what this is actually going to look like. But we would love to hear from you now, your questions you might have. Lori, I don't know how you want to orchestrate this. We might have a cacophony of voices coming in all at once. So I would suggest maybe putting a question in chat. And then what we can do is we can call your name and you can ask the question live if you'd like, or we can just answer it, whoever would be able to do that. But we'd love to hear
I
from
think
you.
we have a couple teachers, I think, that have questions lined up from their students. And so anyone else, if you can type your question into the chat, and we will try to get to as many as we can. We know there's time constraint with many of you who are in school, that you have dismissal in a little while, and we certainly don't want you to be late for your bus or for your parents to pick you up. So let's see, Michael, I think you had a question or two from your students. Do you want to?
Yeah, actually, Reese just posted in the chat there. So Reese, would you go ahead and you can unmute your mic and ask that question?
What do you all hope to find out with your Clover experiments?
That's such a great question. And the thing that I think is really cool, Reese, is you, as one of my direct students, and all the other students on this call are going to help us find this out. We want to know, can clover make their root nodules with the rhizobia in space in the microgravity condition? Nobody's ever tried to do this before, and nobody's ever flown clover to the space station. So we want to know if that can happen, because if that can happen, then we've got a chance of making a growth media that we can grow more plants in space with, and also, as Gil was mentioning, make things better here on Earth.
Awesome. This is going to be really fun to hear and discuss what you guys are discovering and finding out. So Reese, thank you for asking that question. And Mary
Beckett's got another great question. Oh, sorry. I was going to call him Beckett because this was a good one linked to what I think is a good one for Lori. Beckett, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
If the plants get moldy and the smell goes into the vent, will that affect anything?
Well, if they get moldy and they start smelling, it's only going to smell up our cube lab. They will pretty much be contained to that box. And so no smells should be able to escape, since there's not an air transfer from the inside to the outside of the cube lab.
And NASA actually won't let us do that.
If we start seeing that overgrowth, then we know it's going to be smelling, and that could cause the plants to be stressed. And if they are stressed, they will not allow those rhizobia bacteria into their roots. And so we would not see nodulation if we see a lot of mold or fungus in the media.
That's actually a really great question, Beckett. And, with the pandemic, we've all learned to make sure our surfaces are clean and what have you. Lori showed some pictures of our lab that was getting set up to be sent to space. If you notice, they were all wearing these gloves. They really clean the area so to make sure that no bacteria is being added to our experiment other than the ones that we want on it. We want just rhizobia in those little tubes. So that's, being clean is really important in order to minimize the chance for something like that to happen. It might happen, but I think these guys are pretty good in terms of helping us set up these experiments in space. I know there's more student questions, but Mary Vaughn asked a question. I think it's a great backstory, and she actually has the answer to that question too. So I want you to answer your own question, Mary. How did we end up picking the plant that we're flying today? I hope you can unmute there, Mary. Or are you just going to stay in chat?
By the way, I'm just like reading all these questions. I'm going to try to answer as many as I can typing wise. The questions are fantastic, everyone. Like,
Yeah,
these
they
questions
really are.
Great. I wish we could talk for hours because this would take hours.
Let's
Great
do
question.
this. If Mary's not popping in, I'll answer it. So what we try to do is involve students and teachers as early on in the investigation that we can. And last
All right,
year,
finally unmuted. So here we
there you are,
go.
Mary. It's all yours. So how did we do this?
As many as I can typing wise. The questions are fantastic, everyone.
Yeah,
These
they
questions
really are.
Great. I wish we could talk for hours because this would take hours.
Let's do this. If Mary's not popping in, I'll answer it. So what we try to do is involve the students and teachers as early on in the investigation that we can. And last
All right,
year,
finally unmuted. So here we
there you are,
go.
Mary. It's all yours. So how did we do this?
Well, we all took turns as principal investigators, and we all spearheaded a particular legume. And so Clover won because it had such a great growth rate to fit inside our tube, and it was the fastest nodulation.
Right.
Well,
Thank you, Mary. And I guess you're multitasking there. You've got a little time lapse thing going. That was kind of neat. And it's, just to plant the seed there, kind of metaphorically speaking, as we plan for our next mission in 2022. If you're excited about this one, we're going to stay focused on our legume here, our Trifolium pratense, our little red clover with the rhizobia bacteria. But imagine if you wanted to do something like this in the future, what might you want to investigate? So, and we're going to involve everyone once we figure out the general direction we're going to go in, and we're going to need your help, both teachers and students alike, to think about what we should be imagining with respect to research, real authentic research on the International Space Station. So let's just jump through. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to be quiet.
Diana had a good question from Canada.
Why don't you go, Diana? Why don't you go ahead and ask your question, perhaps?
So I'd really love to know how the students feel about what they have seen and heard today, because it's been really mind-blowing for all of us. We've been saying bean-tastic since we got involved. So how exciting has it been for all of you?
And you can type your thoughts into the chat so we can see lots of responses. We'd love to know what you think about this great experiment and rocket launch.
And by the way, folks, the eyes on all of these screens are so big right now, and that is just wonderful.
There is a question I see in the chat. What is the greatest challenge for us in doing Clover experiments? Well, this is the first time that we're flying Clover to the International Space Station. So we have the engineering challenge of this 4U Cube Lab has been specially designed for this mission. So it's a demonstration of the technology. We have to make sure everything works properly. All those valves get the water delivered correctly, and that the cameras are working, and that all of the environmental monitoring systems are working. So it's a technology demonstration since it has to completely operate on its own. Once the astronauts plug it in and power up that box, they're not going to touch it again until it comes out to come back home to us. So it has to pretty much operate autonomously with only some computer instructions sent to it from Space Tango. And we'll be able to do a little bit of communication with it if we need to change the photo period. Maybe it's going to get too hot, right? We don't have convection on the space station where air circulates around the box even. So if it starts running too hot, we may change that photo period from 16 hours to 12 hours. We hope to see the right fluid dynamics with that water going into the felt. We're going to see what happens when we turn those lights on. Which direction will the plants go? Will the roots and the stems grow in the right way where the roots grow down into the media? Or what happens if they start growing away from the media? So there are many challenges, as space is a different environment. And when we take gravity away, you just don't know how an organism is going to respond until you try it. And so all of you are part of it to try it.
There you go, Lori.
My
and
students have found so many glitches along the way in our ground trials, and it's easy here on Earth to restart the experiment. but we've got one shot on this one, and so that's, I think it's the stress of making sure, have we figured out everything that could go wrong, which of course we haven't, but we've tried. And so planning this experiment so that those things that we've had go wrong here on Earth don't go wrong on orbit.
Wonderful. I think you answered Ben's question, both you, Michael, and Lori, with respect to, well, what happens if we can't get these to grow. But Olivia asked a very similar question, but just by sending the seeds up by themselves, do you think they might change? That's a wonderful question. And I know that there's something called tomatosphere, in which they just send tomato seeds up and they stay in space for a little while and then they send them home again. And so I guess I have to turn that back around to you. If we think about life without gravity, what might happen to a seed, right? And that might be part of your investigation as we look at our seeds in space and imagining, maybe you can find some research about people, what they've done with similar investigations. But these kinds of questions, the questions you are asking, everyone's asking, because we still haven't figured it out. We still don't know how to get food to Mars that's going to be fresh. You know, squeezing your breakfast or dinner out of a tube is only good for so many days before you're like, again. You know,
plus the nutrients don't last.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, the nutrients and the vitamins are going to eventually go bad. And that's a long voyage. You know, yesterday.
Yeah, Beckett asked about canned food. Yeah, I mean, so canned food or freeze-dried food or any of those ways of preserving the food, they have a shelf life. They're only going to last really for a few months, and then the value, the food value, not only the taste but the nutritional value really drops, and so you end up eating and not getting what you need out of that food. And that's why it's going to be so important to be able to grow food in space so we can have those vital nutrients that we need to stay healthy. And so many of those nutrients are the ones that protect our bodies, and help our immune system work. And that's going to be super important in space because we don't have the luxury of our magnetosphere and our atmosphere to protect us from the radiation from the sun.
You know, Maria asked a great question in context of perseverance, taking that 6+ month voyage to get in Mars. And boy, these engineers are so smart. These scientists, they've calculations. They're like landing 300 million kilometers and they're like, boom, smack dab where they want to be within a kilometer or two. Absolutely amazing. But the question Maria asked is, as it just landed, this Perseverance rover, what are our thoughts about having plants growing on Mars like legumes? And I know, Lori, you've covered that in some of our earlier lectures. You want to touch on that just a little bit as we think about it? We're looking primarily at here at Earth and how we can make food for everybody, you know, and in a sustainable way. But definitely, if we're going to be planning to send someone to a different world, they're going to want to bring some food along. And bringing your cows and chickens may be a little more difficult to do, as Michael said in the past. So, Lori, can you tell us a little about some of those challenges?
Sure. So whether we use a lunar or a Martian regolith, it may make a difference, right? But those are essentially, it's dead dirt, right? We don't have dead dirt on Earth that grows plants. And so we can't expect that on the moon or Mars either, because it's lacking organic matter. And so we have to add some organics to it. When we compost and take our kitchen scraps and then, you know, put them out and let them, those decomposers, and break it down, then that adds nutrients back to our soils. And so I've got some simulated lunar and Martian regolith now that I've been experimenting with, and it's been fascinating to even see the color difference, the pigment difference of the leaves. There's a great lesson on the platform that hopefully many of the students will get to do, that was authored by Steve Jones and Lauren Parker, two of our PIs, and they can go deep into telling you how you can use these different soils and try to grow clover. Even here in Florida, when I go out to my sandy soil, my son likes to pretend that it's simulated Martian regolith, right? Because it's so clumps of red sand. And we do comparisons of the different soils. So even go to your backyard and see, do you think you have really rich, nutrient-rich soil with all those good microorganisms and organics to grow clover? So while you're growing it in your recycled water bottles in your classrooms and the test tubes. Maybe grab a handful of dirt and put some seeds in it too and see what happens as another comparison. But it's going to be challenging to turn those lunar and Martian regoliths into productive soil. But I think we have a few future Martians here who just might be able to tackle it.
Yeah,
That's
and there's
awesome.
some nice related questions here about that kind of link to that from Luca in Quebec, asking about how we can make clover into a meal, and then a couple other students who are asking about what would we send next. And yeah, Luca, clover in itself isn't going to be the greatest meal. However, clover sprouts are really tasty, and they do have a lot of nutrients, and they're good in the salad. But we are going to have to grow plants that produce more food value, other legumes like soybeans and black-eyed peas and garden peas and things like that. But the clover, well, just like we use it here on Earth, it starts the soil building process. So this is a model organism. It's small. It fits in our little test tubes really well. Okay, so we can get 3 plants in this little test tube, and so it's a demonstration mission. And if that works, then we can grow bigger legumes that will produce more food for us. But those are also going to take a lot more space.
That might be mission 9.
Yeah.
So if we can get that to work, what's your favorite bean? We'll go back to leguminous. But I think I saw Talia jump in for a second. I think she might have had a question. So Talia, feel free to unmute your mic and ask your question if you want to do that. We're getting near the top of the hour. I want to make sure we cover the last few questions here. And I imagine you guys are going to have questions throughout our entire mission. So don't hesitate to send them our way. Is Talia going to?
Yeah, Isabel mentions the Chimayo peppers that some of you are working with. That's a really good example, because the Chimayo doesn't do the nitrogen fixing. It has to be fed through its whole life. So that's not a plant that's going to grow easily, but it's got lots of good food value.
I see Lulu's got her hand raised.
Oh, it looks like Talia's ready.
Oh, okay, Talia.
I read about a rover called Spirit who got stuck in a Mars crater. Were we ever able to get her out of the crater?
Oh, everybody loves Spirit and her twin Opportunity. Yeah. No, sadly, Spirit is stuck there forever. And she was only a one-way mission, so everybody involved in the mission knew that it was only going to last, so long. And actually, the whole lifespan was only expected to be 90 days, 3 months. And Spirit lasted way long after that. Opportunity just stopped working, so it had a couple of decades of operation.
Yeah, 15 years for Opportunity. But you know what, Talia? You and my son have a lot in common, because my son wants to plan that mission to Mars to save Opportunity and Spirit too. And recently he asked a question from JPL, and that's the NASA center where they operated, designed, engineered those rovers. And we asked if it was possible, could these rovers be revived if a human went to Mars? And you know what the answer was? Maybe. And you know what? That's hope right there, that if we send a manned Martian, that these rovers that maybe didn't operate anymore because their solar panels got a little dusty, their wheels got a little creaky and torn up by those Martian rocks, but you might be able to revive those rovers, kind of like in The Martian. So it's always possible with great engineering and ingenuity. I think that you just might have made yourself a mission to Mars.
I love that, Lori. Lulu, you got your hand up. Let's hear what you've got on your mind. What's up?
My question is, when the plants are in space, if they rot up somehow in space, how will you figure it out? Like how they rotted up?
What a great question, Lulu. Well, you know what? You're going to help me figure that out, because you're going to be on this mission as one of my students. But that's exactly, anything that goes wrong with this, we haven't failed. There's no way to fail in this experiment. We might not get nodulation, but not getting nodulation, as excited as we'll be if it happens, not getting nodulation is just as important as getting nodulation. So it's what can we learn along the way?
Michael, another factor is that we are going to have images of the plants on the platform, so we get to see them as they're growing. And if we start seeing weaknesses or yellowing of leaves, or the stems kind of are bending over like the plant is too stressed, we've got that juice box with fixative. And so we'll insert the fixative, we'll give it a computer command, and within just a few hours, that fixative will go into those test tubes and it'll freeze the plants in time. And so then they'll be kind of frozen, and then we'll be able to get them back, hopefully later this spring or summer, before they completely go icky and moldy, right?
Yeah, we're
hard
hoping
to
we can do
experiment
some,
on those.
we're hoping we can do some microscopy. So really look at the cells and see how they might have changed. And if we're lucky, actually look at some of the genetics of the plants and see if they got affected in that way. So Lulu, that's going to be some of the post-flight work that will hopefully be able to answer some of those questions.
Awesome. Wow, I love these questions. Isabel, you've got a question, and then we're going to hear from Steve after that. So Isabel, what do you have?
So when you're sending the legumes up to space, how many are you going to send up?
We're sending a total of 9 seeds, 3 seeds in each one of the test tubes. So that's what so we have 9 leguminats are going to be headed to space in a few hours.
Yeah, and I've got a question for you, actually, or for anyone. If you get your student kit, you're going to notice you have a pack of seeds. You might have close to 100 seeds in that little pack, but look at them more closely.
I have my tomatos right here.
Oh, look at that. You're growing some peppers. How awesome is that? So you're part of the Chile Space Challenge. That's neat. But look at those seeds. They're different colors. They're different sizes. If you were going to make a choice, would you choose different seeds to fly? Because we really hope that they germinate, right? And so those 9, I think based on what we've learned on the ground, we're going to get at least 6 or 7 of those 9 to germinate. That pack right there, Isabel. So look at them. They're all different shapes. And really, if you look at it closely, colors, which ones should be your candidate to try in your mission? Let's give it a shot. Very cool.
How about you pick if they're different size, one small, one big, one, see the different ways that we grow or that they grow, or you could also just choose a different seed from a different plant.
Oh, I really like the way you're taking this, maybe grow a small one, maybe a big one, and compare.
And you can do that on your own too, Talia, and everybody else. You can try it out. See if clover seeds of different colors grow the same way. Do you get the same kind of plant growth out of small, large, or medium seeds? And please let us know what you find out.
We don't want, because if we're going to send plants to space, we want to see if different plants can go to space, because I heard that we're thinking of some people living on the moon. So if we're so maybe if you want a house plant, you want to see what plants you can get, because they can survive on the moon.
That's a great question. So I have to ask back to you, and then we're going to hear from Steve. But for you specifically, what plant would you send to space?
I would send a apple tree seed. Then you could have a tree in space, so at least you would have some food.
Space apples. So I don't, I don't know if they've grown an apple tree or a lemon tree or lime tree or any kind of fruit tree. Probably takes a little while. That's exciting. Something to consider for everyone. What would you send to space? Steve, thought, question, idea?
I've got a question here from my friend Elle that she's would like to ask.
What's up, Elle?
Hi, I'm Elle. So my question is, do different light affect the growth of like different plants?
Does light affect the growth of different plants? Who would like to answer that?
Can I take that one?
I was going to ask Gil, do you want to take that one?
So kind of related to the first, one of the earlier questions about the challenges of this whole mission. And one of them was figuring out how do we keep our plants from growing before we get up to the ISS. because there's a potential that we're going to be in the dark for a while. And one of the ways that we tried to figure that out is with light. Light absolutely affects the way that that plants grow. We see light as, actually, we don't see it. We just kind of see because we see light. But in reality, light can be split into many different colors, and the different wavelengths of light affect the way in which plants can grow. So for example, I'm doing research right now on these other plants that are affected with blue light. And when they're exposed to blue light, you get these little dwarf versions of those plants with a lot of nutrients. And some red light can make some plants go to sleep and then wake up later. So absolutely, yes, lights can absolutely affect the way that these plants grow. And that's been a lot of the research that we've been doing, is figuring out what is the correct light recipe for our experiment up in the ISS. Fantastic question. And there's still a lot that we don't know about how these clovers are affected by light. And I hope that through this experiment, we'll get to learn more.
Oh, Ted, you're muted.
I was going to say, that's kind of cool. We can actually make light recipes. But you know what I just noticed in the chat here, and there's just so many faces, I can't see everybody, but we've got some guests from South Africa. Now, Shivar, one of the earlier questions was about different kinds of plants and what have you. You want to just say a quick hi to everybody and perhaps share what your experience has been on our earlier mission and what you guys are looking forward to there in South Africa?
Hi, Ted, can you hear me okay? Excuse my camera. I don't think it's working tonight for some reason, but let's hope my voice is.
Yep.
It's dark anyway, Shivar.
Lovely. But for those of you that don't know, so I'm Shivar Raju, and I'm aiming to connect all our wonderful students down here in South Africa and across all of South Africa to the ExoLab experiment this year. And ExoLab has been very popular in South Africa among a lot of our schools, from Durban to Cape Town to Johannesburg. And we've had so many inspired students that have been contributing to the experiment, who are very excited to join this year, especially. I think we have about 10 schools. Fatima is in the squad as well, and she'll tell you we have about 10 schools with so many students that are just so excited. And I know that from my own involvement in ExoLab for the past couple of years, it's just been amazing listening to what Ted, Tony, Michael, and Gil and what everyone has been, just teaching these students. I know just from me alone, I've been using azuki beans. I remember Gil talking to me about azuki beans, and I've been using it a lot more in my meals ever since he started preparing those meals with azuki rice. I've been preparing a lot more rice balls, and I really feel that I've been getting my iron, proteins, and vitamins for the day because of that. So that's been just fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. And as I'm going through the screens here, Romania, Ionia, you've joined us. So it's late for you. Do you want to just say a quick hello? And I know you're working with high school students out there. That's fantastic.
Hello, greetings from Bucharest. Nice to be here.
We're so glad
Hope
that
you
you're
can
joining.
hear me. Hello.
Oh, yes. Yes, hello.
Okay. I teach in a high school. My students are wonderful. I'm very proud of them. And thank you very much for this wonderful project and for this wonderful opportunity. This project is very popular in my school. Thank you.
Awesome. We're so glad you're joining us again. And so I think, were we scheduled to just go an hour? So we're a little over?
Yes, we were actually going to try to keep it to 30 minutes originally, but we had so many great questions and extensions.
And so,
we're going to wrap it up. Yep.
What I'm thinking here, though, is now we've got some events coming up for our mission, right? So why don't we do a quick summary? So tomorrow morning at 9:36 a.m. Pacific time, if our weather is good, we're going to have an instantaneous launch, which is right when that International Space Station is overhead, they're going to launch the rocket. If the weather is any issue with the weather, like we saw that one picture, it looked a little cloudy and rainy. I think there's a 75% chance of launch tomorrow. There's a 95% chance for launch on Sunday, as I understand. So we're going to go up this weekend with almost certainty. We're going to be in orbit for a period of time. You've learned a little bit about our instrument, what we're going to be trying to do with our plants and our bacteria. You're going to be able to follow us along at home at your kitchen or somewhere in your house or at your school. That's going to be exciting. we're going to then, as we heard, use those same valves that originally put water in. We're going to put a fixative in that kind of puts the plants in a stasis where they won't grow anymore. So when we bring them back to Earth in early May, here's the exciting thing. We're going to get to ride home with some astronauts. We'll be on the Crew 1 Dragon, an historical mission with some astronauts that have been on the space station for a while. They're going to be coming home, and they're going to be bringing home with them some experiments like ours. When it gets back down to Earth in early May, we're going to get that to our labs. We're going to do some microscopy, really zoom in and look at those cell walls and see what differences we might have seen from the plants that have been in microgravity versus the plants that have been in your classrooms or at your home. And if they're in really great shape, as we heard from Michael, we might want to look at some genetic information. It's a pretty long mission for these, so there's a low likelihood we'll do it. And there's an outside chance we might be able to repeat this mission again on another flight. We're going to kind of hold out for that. But if we get word of that happening, we're going to definitely let you guys know. But we have some live events. And Lori, those are on Thursdays. Is that correct?
Yes. So in Thursdays in March, we will have live sessions. We also are going to have some recorded videos come out throughout the month of March. So for everyone who's asked a question, and if you didn't get your answer today, I'm going to be saving those, and we're going to answer a few of them during our recorded videos or some other live sessions. So definitely, if you have any outstanding questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll keep a note of them, and it's going to be fun to work this mission together and answer so many good questions from our curious scientists.
Absolutely. And this ExoLab-8 show, which is going to start once we're on orbit, will be a live broadcast similar to this. If you've got something you want to share with everybody, put together a little video. Make sure it's okay with your school and with the parents for you to do that. But we'd love to get some things from our students. Again, drawings, if you're doing drawings, or if you've got a little video you want to share your research. We can't guarantee that we'll show everything, but if we have some content, we've got some time, we'd love to showcase the work that you guys are doing in your research. This is real research, and we're doing some really amazing things for the first time. And there are nearly 4,000 students, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be along for this ride, which is incredible. Getting all those students in this little tiny box that's going to space. So we're really, really excited that you're joining us on this. And please, any questions, thoughts, or ideas during the entirety of this mission, do not hesitate at all to reach out to your teacher or your parents or any of us here at Magnitude. We're so glad you're joining us in the journey. And Tony, I know you're in the background there probably managing all this stuff. You want to give us a nice sign off? Tony, without Tony, I don't think we'd be able to do any of this stuff. Are you?
Well, I can say that about today. Everything pretty much handled by Laurie Waters. She put together with everything, the agenda, getting everyone excited, getting all the PIs with all the information they need. So, it's really Laurie.
Well, you guys are...
Tony, it really takes a team. It really does to make all this happen. Every person on here has definitely played a role in bringing this mission to fruition, from all the ground trials last year from Leguminaut, just the leadership of all these teachers, putting together lessons on the platform. This is the way science works. It is teamwork that makes things happen. And so thank you, Tony, for the kudos for this. But it is really every single person on here, from student to teacher to PI, Ted, Tony, both of you, Michael, I mean, everyone, this mission is going to be so exciting because we are all doing this together. And the pandemic has changed the way we've had to do school and learning. But you know what? It has brought us together for a purpose and for a mission. And we are going to go grow in space together.
Or go to grow. That sounds great.
Go to grow.
So all this prep work is now in your hands, students. You now have an opportunity to do this research, and we'd love to hear your results. You might see something that you weren't expecting. You might feel disappointed that it didn't do what you expected it to do, but it's doing what it's going to do. So record it, document it, try to understand why. I think anything is a good thing as long as you're enjoying us in this mission. So thanks, everybody. I guess I really hate to sign off, but we're probably going to have to because there's other things we need to do to get ready for our flight. Keep an eye on that, on the weather there in Wallops, Virginia. And if you, I guess we've got a live broadcast tomorrow for the event as well. You want to sign us off with the information on that, Lori? And then I think we'll call it a day.
Sure, we'll be back. There's another Zoom link. So if you need that to tune in, you can email me at Lori@Magnitude.io, or feel free to join us back on YouTube on our Magnitude.io YouTube channel. So it'll be exciting whether or not we launch tomorrow or we'll launch Sunday. Either way, it's going to be a fabulous start to our mission.
The launch party starts at noon. And hopefully we light that candle at about noon Eastern, excuse me. Light that candle about 40 minutes later.
Awesome.
Stay curious, everybody. And hopefully in 24 hours from now, we'll have legumes in space.
Wonderful. Tanya and Diana from Canada, Gil from Japan, Shivar and who else is in South Africa with us today? Is Fatima there? Iona from Romania. We didn't have any of our German friends today, but from all of us around the world, we're go to grow. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye now.